All right, so my name's Joshua. I'm here with my friend Amber over here, and Amber's from Boise, and we're introducing her today in this interview as a sound healer as well as a cosmetologist. We don't want to overlook the fact that she does some amazing work in cosmetology as well. Before we get started into the actual interview, though, I just want to make a couple notes that sound healing works by activating some parasympathetic nervous system. It's the opposite of the stress, flight, or fight response. It can slow down your breath rate, your heart rate, even your brain waves, putting you into an almost trance-like state. So, just with that said, a special note would be that those who should not do sound healing, okay, people with cardiac pacemakers, artificial heart valves, cardiac arrhythmias, and or people with a stent. So people with deep brain stimulation devices as well. So this is just a brief overview, as sound healing is a very sensitive thing in this world, and ultimately what we're going to be trying to do is discover this faculty from someone who actually practices with it. So welcome, Amber. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I was gonna say too that that's what they recommend is those people not do that if you have any of those conditions. But I have worked with a few people who have tried it out and it ended up being beneficial for them. And so it's definitely like use your own judgment and try it like baby steps first kind of a thing. But I think doctors are like, don't do it.
Yeah,
So use at your own risk.
lots of red tape and red flags when it comes to the carryover from a holistic approach to the doctorate degrees
Yeah,
in the modern day.
exactly.
But yeah, I agree with that. Like, just a case by case, make sure you do a consultation with someone prior to indulging too intensely to anything that we might be talking about today. As far as you though, Amber, I know that we talked a couple weeks ago now, and as far as your path in becoming a sound healer, I know there's always a lot that gets culminated into where we find our passion or what we do for a living. So if you can, just briefly, this bridge between cosmetology and sound healing and what that really looks
Yeah.
like for you.
Well, I have been in the beauty industry for such a really long time. I was actually doing hair in like 2020 and then was got super ill and I looked like I had tremors. Well, it looked like I had Parkinson's. I guess it was pretty extreme. So anytime that I used my hands, nobody wants their hair cut with somebody, shaking like that. So I ended up taking a break from hair while I was trying to go on my healing journey, figuring out what was happening. And I ended up taking a bunch of online classes. Sound healing was one of them that came to my attention. Um, and then I ended up getting certified in it. So I think it was just kind of the universe like shoving me on that path a little bit. But I still missed the beauty industry. And so I ended up, besides doing sound healing, I ended up recently bringing facials with sound healing. So I will do a full on facial, and then while the mask is sitting on, I'll do some sound healing. So it's a great way to kind of introduce people to that world as well when they're not used to it. Because I'm only doing sound healing for about 10 to 15 minutes during those facials while that mask is sitting on. Um, and really, I feel like the combination of the two just really helps to help you glow all over your body from the inside to the outside, basically. But I really think that they work well together.
Absolutely. And I know I got to see Amber at a booth that she was at an event that a mutual friend of ours was running in Burley, Idaho. She's actually on our interview series here as well, Jenna Lee. And when I saw your booth, obviously I got to sit down with you and I recorded a 60-second, video of you running your sound healing bath on stage and so on and so forth. And I know we kind of got into this, but there's like the crystal healing, and then there's other faculties. Like you have a couple extra tools, so there's like tuning forks and all the things. So if you can also just briefly talk into like what's your favorite tool, how gradual of a impact you feel like you've been in pursuit of putting on, like, let's say a stage performance for those or a room full of sound healing. What did that look like?
Yeah. So I'll start with my favorite tools to use. So I love using crystal sound bowls. They One day I'll get um crystals that are like, there's a bowl that has like moldavite in it, kind of thing. But the ones that I work with right now are quartz. And quartz has the ability that you can program it to anything that you want, which makes it awesome. And so the crystal bowls that I use, um, each of them are associated with a certain chakra. And so I actually program them even more to help heal that chakra. Um, and then from there, probably my next one is, I should have brought my tools over here to show. But I have like this crystal quartz pyramid.
Okay.
And I don't know, it's basically like, I'm trying to think of how to describe it. It's just like right over there. Um, but I'll spin it around. It's on a cord. And so I'll spin the pyramid around and then chime it, and it rotates, and it has, like, if I put it over somebody's head or even any part of their body, it has like this pulling sensation that just feels amazing. Um, and I actually use that one when I feel like something is really stuck um, in the body and doesn't really want to come out, like some kind of like energy or trauma that's just kind of really hesitant. It's great of like giving an extra nudge to kind of pull out. And then I also will use some drumming kind of occasionally. I feel like that's more, a little bit more with like ancestral kind of thing, or if needing to like kind of rattle something out. But sometimes I'll even use just like a rattle or a rain stick kind of thing is really good for kind of like shaking things up. And then tuning forks as well.
Right.
Those ones I tend to use the most when I'm doing an individual sound session with somebody. So I help to align all of the chakras, and I actually go beyond the 7 chakras into 13 chakras. I'm
Right.
certified as a 13 chakra healer. And so the tuning forks are great with that they have so many different frequencies to them. There's one that can help with like inflammation. And then I have one for each of the 7 chakras as well, including like the soul star chakra and the earth chakra. Um, but yeah, I feel like those are probably the tools that I gravitate to the most, but it's really an intuitive thing on what I'm using, and who the client is, basically.
But also, like you said about one of your first tools you ever used, I think we talked about was like your intuition coming through like a pendulum, right? Using this pendulum. Um,
Yeah,
well, what would you have
yeah.
to say about that and your experience therein?
Um, well, it's been a long journey for me to trust my gut, my intuition.
Right.
And so when I started kind of coming into some of these gifts when I was doing online classes, I had a pendulum, and I still have it. I'll go to it occasionally, especially if people have blockages up. So it basically is, I think there might actually, this isn't my main one, but here's one that actually happens to be near me.
Nice.
So basically it's like, give me a yes, and then give me a no.
So
And then it will
front to back, yes. Side to side, no.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if it doesn't know, then it will do a maybe, which it will slowly transition to. And so that's more of a circle that it's doing.
Okay. Yeah. I see that.
But everybody's works differently for them. Started switching to a yes as my thought was coming out when I was about to say this. Everybody's pendulum works differently for them. So it's important that you ask what those are when starting to work with one. But yeah, it helped me a lot to be able to trust the knowledge that because sometimes it just feels like a thought. Like one time I just had the thought of like asking somebody, like, have you been sexually abused before? And I was just like, that is a really like, I don't want to ask anybody that. Like that was the thought that I was having. But she was, and that was something that I was working on for her. But yeah, it's just sometimes this knowledge just comes in the head and feels like a thought. And that's me just learning that I needed to trust my intuition.
All right. So yeah, we're back. So basically, we were just talking about that intuition using a pendulum. On this path, though, to our intuition, it's kind of a hard thing to really recognize at the full scope, though, right? Because no matter what, as like younger individuals, toddlers into adolescents, into young adults, it's like how much can you really trust yourself when the whole world's basically telling you what to do? So there's
Mm-hmm.
always this amazing path in everybody's life, in my opinion, too. Like, I'm always going to be learning. Like, my goal, my objective in life is always going to be to maintain that teachability, right? Maintain this curiosity about the world. And I know we've talked about this briefly too, about your study with was it Eileen Day McKusick is the author of
Yeah.
Electric Body, Electric Health, and Tuning the Human Biofield, right? We've already kind of touched on the chakras, the 7 chakras, which you kind of, there's 13 to this extended possibility. Even the solfeggio frequencies, which I've done, has a full 9. So that's like subroot frequencies, the root of our lower 3 vertebrae in our spine, but it calibrates all the way to the center of the earth. And then also,
Mm-hmm.
that crown chakra really not even being attached to us physically, but there's such a space between. And as I've talked to Amber before, it's kind of there's these in between chakras, and then there's the beyond chakras. So something in our knees, something between our throat and our third eye, and then other ones like beyond the sphere of connection, really physically, more in that sphere. So if you wanted to talk, I know I'm taking a little tangent there, but about your path, long form, to any degree you feel comfortable, it's like, what you learned from these curiosity with Eileen and so on and so forth. And I'll give you the floor back.
Yeah. Well, her book is, because I actually got certified from an online thing, but I felt like I actually learned the most from her. The electric body, electric health, and then the tuning the human biofield. That was really where she was one who opened up to me that working in the field around you. And she has actually figured out that there are certain parts of the auric field that will hold certain things. So she has like a breakdown on if you have something in this area that could mean that it's like parental kind of thing. So she has like a whole entire breakdown that she spent years figuring out basically where these things hold in our energy field around us. So that's one of the huge reasons of why I started using tuning forks around the body instead of just directly on the body. Um, she is, I feel like, the guru of tuning forks, to be honest. So I highly recommend those books if anybody's wanting to get into it.
Like where was the catch where you like really realized like this works and you could move beyond your own skepticism of yourself and really fully activate on that intuition, I guess.
I think honestly it was feedback from people I was working on was the biggest thing. At first it started with like my sister and my best friends, and
Yeah.
they're great clients and everything, especially because they're getting like free services to get some feedback. But
Yeah.
there's always kind of like, but I also know them really well. And so it was kind of when I started working on the strangers, that's really when I was like, oh, okay, like I can do this, and the intuition that's coming to me is accurate, and to basically trust that. I am terrible with memorizing things. So even when it comes to like Elaine's books where she talks about like certain things in certain areas, like I would honestly probably need to look at a graph to be able to be like, this says this area. But interesting enough, um, like sometimes that information just gets downloaded to me when I'm working on somebody, and then I'll like look it up afterwards on like her book, and it was the same thing that came to me. But then I also, you had mentioned like the 13 chakras as well, and that when I got certified was through Rainey Highley. She has a book called The Water Code, and a lot of it talks about like programming water and stuff, but for the most part, there's a breakdown of extra chakras in there. And what she basically channeled in this book, she was a lawyer, and when she channeled it in, she was just like, are you sure you want me to write this book? Like, I don't even know what quantum physics means. Like, there's got to be people who are better to write about this. And she got told, nope, it's her. And so as we're moving into a 3D world, into like a 5D world, we're ready for these extra chakras, is basically what she got told. And I really resonated with them. I always was somebody who was like, why are the seven main chakras only in like the upper part of the body? That always seemed off to me. Um, and so I actually have a little bit of a chart. It will be backwards for you guys, but you can somewhat be
Yeah.
able to see where the other ones are
Yeah, it looks good. I can see it straightforward. So
at.
the boundary
So
at the first.
at the boundary. So that one is at the base of the feet. Um, that basically, it's a silver, losing my earpiece. It's a silver color, and basically, that is our protection bubble. Um, it surrounds our whole entire body, but it does start at the base of the feet, is where the center of that chakra would be, or the like starting point of it, I guess I should say. Um, but it's made to protect our energetic field, basically.
Kind of like an
Um,
electromagnetic field, then, an aura,
yes.
if you will. Like the reason we don't get hit by asteroids on our planet Earth is because that energy field, that firmament, if you will, like that exists at the outer edges. Yeah, that makes sense.
Hmm.
I like that.
Yeah. And then the next one up is the base chakra. That one is more of I support, and that one is right at the feet. Um, and it makes it look like it's at the ankles on this picture, but that's just because boundary one's kind of in the way.
Yeah.
But it is at the center of the feet, and that's basically it supports us, um, blends our aura into the earth aura, basically.
Right.
So it's just the meshing of the two together.
It's like the touch point to where we're actually connected then on
Yes,
Mother Earth. Yeah.
exactly. And then there's the golden altar, and that's at the center of our knees. And that one is like I respect. That has a lot to do with sometimes people think of it as like spirituality or their connection to God or source or whatever it is that they think of. But it's basically represents an awareness to or recognition of your place in relation to everything is essentially what that is.
And
And
that
I
makes
always
sense.
found it really,
We talked about this
yeah.
one briefly too, because it makes a little bit of sense when we think about things a little bit maybe too logically sometimes. But at the knees, in that form of prayer, they're always like, there's a thing about the camel, like camel goes to his knees once when he rises and once before he goes to bed. Throughout the day, he goes completely dry throughout his day, but it always starts on the knees and it ends on the knees.
Exactly.
So, it's quite an interesting parallel when we're going beyond those 7 chakras, how all parts of our body are going to be really intrinsically, a part of this system, this spiritual
Hmm.
system. And I agree with that completely. Didn't
Yeah.
mean to cut you
And
off, though.
oh, no, you didn't. And I feel like too, like when people are having knee issues,
Mm-hmm.
and getting like multiple surgeries on their knees, like that's something to really look into is their connection to everything. And, maybe they're lacking some kind of um, religion or source kind of thing that they need to understand, like where they belong,
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
all it. Um, and then the grounding cord, that one is right here, but it actually goes up the whole entire spine. Um, so that's kind of like a copper cord. It's closely related to like the body's nervous system in a sense. And so it's almost like there's a cord that goes all the way up your spine through the top of your head and plugs into the universe. And then there's another one that goes to the base of your spine and all the way down into the center of the earth. And so the connection to everything essentially, and we're plugged into it through our spine essentially. Um,
Yeah, possibly like all those nerves that go like in between, intertwined between our spine that kind of connect that physical body. It's like the best way I've kind of come to understand these 7 chakras too is, that the root, heart, and crown chakra are much more in alignment, even by their frequency. We were talking about the crystal bowls earlier. Each of those are tuned to a certain hertz frequency. So the 396 hertz frequency of the root chakra, the 693 of the heart chakra, and the 963 of the crown. Like that's all carried over by numerology of 3. But if you're talking about that as like a cord, this like taproot through, that nervous system makes complete sense because the ability to feel is not like all of our other senses does not get condensed into just our head. That's what brings us all the way through those 7 chakras into the rest of our body, touching the bottom of our knees and so forth. So it is
yeah,
that's how
everywhere.
I can make sense of it that way. But
Yeah. And then the next one that is missing is actually, um, in a sense, the heart chakra was taken and shoved with another one into what we know as the heart chakra. And so it's actually the breath and the you call it either the breath or the thymus. And interesting enough, they actually had switched the heart chakra to pink instead, and the thymus one should actually be green. So I thought that was interesting how they kind of shifted that. And so, like, to me, the color change made sense. Because I know when I was learning about crystals and each color is kind of associated with certain chakras, I noticed the heart chakra always had like greens and pinks. So I found this really interesting. Um, and then with breath chakra, in a sense, it is like our connection to earth because like when we're breathing in the oxygen that the plants had released. And then when we breathe out, we release carbon dioxide, and then that's what the plants breathe in. So it's just like a cycle that kind of goes around and helps connect us. Um, but the way that they tell you to kind of like imagine the breath chakra in a sense is that the center of it is right there at your thymus. And you could think of it as like a butterfly, like your thymus is the body of the butterfly, and then the lungs are the wings of the butterfly. And so it kind of flows out into the lungs, essentially.
Yeah, I like that.
Um,
That makes a lot of sense. Like my base understanding of heart chakra or thymus, I guess solely. I think we were talking about the what's it called? The rose quartz is pink, and then most others, that calibrate to that heart chakra are green. But there's such an interesting thing with that butterfly reference that came to mind where the heart chakra in an air element is also much to the point of so as above, so is below, kind of like what's coming in. It's this open space, and if we know anything about a butterfly, it's anything that's on the left wing is also on the right. There's such a what's the right word?
Symmetrical.
Yeah, it's very symmetrical in every nature. So that relationship between the air that you were talking about the trees of life, what comes from the earth. That's the beauty of this, like root chakra to the air energy. Our roots, when they get out into the sky, when we actually become a part of the bigger universe and with more acceptance of what's going on as opposed to avoidance, then we can breathe more fully and indulge more deeply. And I don't know
Hmm.
if this is still accurate or if you can expound a little bit more, but you said something about the one of them being in the front more and the other in the back between these two, as opposed to maybe on top of each other. Is that accurate?
Um, I my intuition is saying yes.
Yeah.
Um, the fact to back that up, I don't have the fact to back it up for sure, but my intuition says yes on that. You can feel your breath further in your back or also like um towards the front. Like I know when I was really ill at one point in time, I had really shallow breaths and it was like in my chest. Um, and so it was like almost like quicker kind of breathing. Um, that's not the best way to breathe.
Right.
So it's interesting because we don't have to think about breathing, but your body might automatically default to something that it shouldn't be. So we're really taking the moment to like taking those deep breaths and stuff can really help even deepen like sound healing meditation as well. Um, and that's why there's different kind of breathing techniques depending on what you're trying to achieve, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I feel like that really helps kind of bring in that, that breath chakra has so much to do with a lot of our healing journey, essentially.
Yeah. That makes complete sense. There's always going to be more to know about the physical body, but it is a developmental cycle, right? We only really get to 35 years of life before we kind of stop becoming able to sustain. Like there's a point of degeneration as opposed to like this process of building in. And if there's anything I've come to know in my early studies of chakra was that, as a baby, for instance, their first year of life is that the sensitivity is so extreme that every single little touch on their body is like really extreme. But they also don't have, as we're talking about the heart chakra, a developed chest, a complete rib cage, that protection of that space. So they tend to breathe much more into their belly, right? That solar plexus
Hmm.
chakra. If you look at a baby at night, like you don't see their chest rising and falling, you see their belly rising and falling. And at what
Yep, they
stage?
know
Yeah, and at what stage do they actually start becoming chest breathers? It's like, you
the
know,
world.
yeah, yeah. When we become conscious of certain things, we start making up our own opinions. When we pass through that channel of our own personal power, usually between the ages of 3 to 5, and so it's kind of, at that point we become a little bit cheeky, little kids doing our own things, and so on and so forth. But all in all, this front to back, I don't remember either who it was specifically, but it's a philosophy about soft front, strong back. You know, it's the idea of remaining receptive to the world, to new ideas, no matter how much, and only incorporating those into my back in order to remain strong with self-esteem and encouragement to others. That's really all that this is. We can't remain so, especially in our heart space, right? Like where love is calibrated to all these other arenas of life that maybe it doesn't even have any business, today. We become so, and this is just my intention or what I've been studying a lot lately, because a lot of what I do is around the heart chakra personally, but it's like, this is like a gateway to what otherwise becomes the spiritual connection. And we're talking about now, like we're talking about sound healing, but somehow we get caught on this breath work, like it all gets connected. And so,
Yeah.
as a healer with the intuition, with the ability to trust ourselves, let me just ask you a direct question then here, Amber.
Okay.
When it comes to the heart chakra, when it comes to healing another person, do you really feel that you need to be like in an element of love toward the person that you're healing? Or where's that connection? Because in today's modern day, it's a little bit too transactional in a lot of ways. Where is like that love or passion behind what you do? And is it more in like doing group settings versus individual settings, and just wherever you want to go with that?
Yeah. I feel like there definitely has to have some good intention behind it. So coming from a place of loving and wanting to help other people, I feel like is a huge thing that's needed, whether it's in a group setting or in a individual setting. I feel like in an individual setting, I always tell them to give me permission to kind of work on them. And when I had mentioned an energetic block earlier, and that's what I was talking about, is that if somebody is like kind of on the like, I don't really know if this is for me, like this is woohoo, like out there, it doesn't actually work, they're not going to receive it very well, because as much as there's only so much that I can do. But it's really, everybody has power within them to heal themselves. And sometimes it just, like the frequencies definitely help to move that energy around and stuff, and speed the process along. But it's really, um, I need that permission to be able to work on them so that their body is properly ready to receive and to start to heal. And I feel like with an individual session, I can really accomplish a lot more. Um, However, there are some people in like a group setting that are really sensitive to this kind of stuff, and they can get just as much out of it from an individual session. But I will say there are some people who get really anxious being in kind of a group environment, that they're worried about taking on other people's themes around them. And so sometimes group settings aren't the best for some of those people, because it's more of their anxieties on what's happening than necessarily the reality of it, although it is the reality of it. So
Yeah.
that is relative. Um,
For you, do you feel better connected when you do one-on-one or group, or is there any distinction?
um, I can get more information from an individual one where that's where I'm kind of more of like, oh, this person is probably dealing with this. When I'm working in a group session, it's more about what holes that I need to be playing. I also will kind of like push out like certain kind of like energies, or I like focus on certain chakras that need to be healed, kind of a thing. But when I'm in a group setting, I'm not getting those downloads on, traumas that need to be released for somebody specifically, if that makes sense. And I do set up a great space ahead of time, which people a lot of times aren't aware of that I have like a routine that I do before where I'm asking people's spirit guides to come in, that this is a safe space. I'm staging it. I'm putting intentions into the space so that it is ready for them. And another thing that I say too is that other people's energy will impact other people as well, that they have their own healing journey in those group sessions.
Yeah.
So I kind of make sure to set the space, and then afterwards I, release people's spirit guides and stuff. So there's a little bit behind the scenes stuff that happens as well to make it a great experience for everybody, the best that I can.
Makes a lot of sense. I use saging, and it's in the common practice for those who do tarot readings or just anyone who's working with any spiritual attunement. So I think that's fascinating. That's amazing that you're also using that, going above and beyond. And some of my favorite massage therapists I've ever gone to, like I look for someone who does it under a Kundalini umbrella, and they'll have aromatherapies going on. They'll have some incense burning during it and a specific sound frequency depending on like what I'm looking for. It's just like the preparation work that goes in, that's what really becomes harmonious to an experience as opposed to things. And I would like to also just share, I agree that everything is going to be much better, deeper, more meaningful and one-on-one, but the ability to like do something beyond, like in a general scope, create something beautiful at the bigger, broader whole, like the massive and altruistic, intention. I think right now it becomes more of the objective, because any of those blockages we're referring to, right? Those are lower level chakras when we're not comfortable with who we are, when we're not fully embracing our own creativity, our own divinity. That's by definition our root and sacral chakras. So, sound healing with the lower frequencies is going to be the best for sleep, for regeneration, and so forth. All this stuff, like when we get caught up in our heart, the opening process by a sound healer, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like it's going to be more about that lower frequency healing.
Most of the time it does tend to be the lower ones, yeah.
Yeah, because as far as what I've come to understand, even by if you look up frequencies on YouTube, and 285 is one of my favorites when I'm feeling sick or I'm feeling like just depleted or like I'm just overspent physically. I prefer to go under 174 or 285 hertz frequency. So dull, so low. It's at the cellular level, and it allows my body to kind of heal. By definition, we're talking about healing, sound healing, more fully, more completely while I'm asleep. These higher frequencies, once we pass the heart chakra, that becomes the spiritual attunement. That becomes kind of a heady thing. If someone falls asleep to a frequency above 693 hertz, they can wake up with, headaches and, all kinds of stuffiness. And there's just a lot of, if you're not calibrated to a really comfortable feeling in your own strength, strong back, soft front philosophy, like that's why I'm kind of taking a segue here to say stay lower than the heart, stay in the solar plexus, the sacral, and then obviously all these others that we've talked about so forth, the base. Get on your knees, do the things that really calibrate us back to Mother Earth, as opposed to like being disenchanted by something up in the higher place. Because this space up here, that requires a lot more discernment and understanding and experience.
Yeah, I definitely feel like you have to get the lower chakras aligned first before you're prepared to start working on those upper ones. And a lot of times those do come with symptoms, even when they're being released of like headaches and tinnitus ringing in the ears and sinus issues. Like there's so much that kind of comes with it. And I think that that was part of my healing journey as well, was unlocking some of these chakras, and then dealing with these symptoms where you're just like, what is this? Is this a gift, or am I just, you know, having a headache for 2 years straight?
Yeah,
which I
exactly.
which I did have, but I have now managed the headache. I don't have one for that was miserable for 2 years straight, but I figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, any physical sickness really is coming from a lack of calibration to, what's actually in us spiritually. So, if I need the extra physical activity, I was telling Amber before we started, it's like I'm back at the gym and I'm starting to feel all heady, like my clogged up again. I had a headache. I left work a little bit early today. But if I don't give myself that rest and I just push through and be like, oh, I'm just going to stay at work for these next 3 hours and tolerate the 4th of July crowd, and it just makes things worse. And then the next day, that's like the whole principle behind do what's best for us first. Like, stay in the lower frequencies. Once we get beyond here, when we get into this throat chakra and all these other, expanded up to the 13 chakras up here, it's the same thing. It's higher frequency, it's disruption, it's a lot of discernment, and it's hearing. Are that we're in a world. I know that we all know this to certain degrees, varying degrees, but have FM radio and this click, a short 60-second thing here, just type TikTok, YouTube shorts, the whole thing. Just so constant, we're flooding our
Just
ears
scrolling.
with nonsense. And like we don't get to make the decision on what comes next. It's just like a roller coaster ride of sounds. And when we're not taking the appropriate intention to have attention in the realms of things that we need to be spending our time with, especially when it comes to the music that we listen to,
Hmm.
that's like, we go through fads. Like there's the grunge era, then there's the punk era, and if we go back to the 60s, there's the ska era. But even in like Mozart's day and Bach's day, when they played music, it was disruptive to the ears of those who were otherwise living in some quote serenity space. It was too it was too impactful. It churned up so much energy inside of them. And that's what sound, from what I've come to understand, is. It is the number one healer. It's a sound wave that we cannot avoid in this world that we live in.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like that actually leads us into the last chakra that's missing too.
Yeah,
It's the harmony one,
perfect.
and so that has a lot to do with hearing. And interesting enough, also like our hormones. So it is located basically between the mouth and the ear, or sorry, the mouth and the nose. I'm pointing
Nothing
at.
else? Okay.
Um, but then like in line with your ears, in the middle of your brain is where that's located at. It's the HPG axis, but I can't think of the long terminology for that.
It's okay. I can look it
But
up.
that's,
HPG.
yeah,
Okay.
axis. And that's the part of our brain that's responsible for hormones. So it's basically the chakra that helps us harmonize. And so it has a lot to do with balancing everything out. Also has to do with not only balancing out our bodies, because we need the hormones to, and if one hormone is too high, another one is too low, like we're imbalanced. And so basically music helps balance that out as well.
So let's go with this. The hypothalamic pituitary gonadal, HPG axis, is a hormone regulating system that plays a key role in the reproductive and sexual development of both males and females. It's made up of three parts that work together in a coordinated way, like you were talking about. So that's the harmony, right? There's a relationship between all these things: the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and gonads. And then there's a little bit more. Of course, I'm using AI Google, so how trustworthy can we use? But
well, it sounded accurate from you. Because I was like I remember it's like this fancy word that I'm just gonna slaughter. But yeah, it's the axis, so it's like the middle of all of those.
Yeah.
Um,
So obviously, what we're talking about is this throat chakra, right? Everything here, the hypothalamus, the gonads, and then right here to the ears. So it kind of like, if it calibrates, that makes sense. This is the access
so right
point,
there in
upper jaw, which ironically for me, and this isn't just an interesting fact, I don't know if it's worth putting on here, but that's where I had my surgery. I've had 2 surgeries. One was the knee surgery, a right knee surgery as a kid, and then when I graduated high school a couple years later, I had this whole part of my mouth shaved out and wired shut.
Oh wow!
Yeah, for orthodontic procedure. I know what it's like to have this complete thing severed and pieced back together, basically. And for what reason, I don't know what the burden or the blessing has come of it. All I know is that, I used to have a really setting back jaw. So from the side, you would have seen like this, my whole jaw right here back quite a bit.
Go inward, yeah.
So as opposed to breaking the jaw out here at the earlobes and then moving it forward structurally, they decided to like almost tilt my whole scoliolar like effect down.
Wow.
And I don't know how many inches or how dramatic it was, but nonetheless, doctors these days, like, they just go in and do whatever they want to. These,
Maybe you just needed your harmony chakra balance.
But yeah, so like putting these doctors, they're allowing me to put my skull back into harmony, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it could be this separation point, because I don't always feel like the rest of human civilization. Not because I'm better than or not, but because I'm curious, I remain in harmony. I do my best to remain in harmony with the things that I'm curious about or interested in. But I don't. Yeah. I also don't get sick, like almost ever.
That's awesome.
Without very like obvious, indicators.
I'd be interested to know if like you felt like things were kind of imbalanced a little bit before that, because it can also have to do with like talking to somebody as well, since it's like right there at our ears. So like if you feel like you're not being heard, kind of thing could be something to do with that as well. Or even if you're not harmonious with people next to you, kind of a thing, it can definitely impact that as well.
It's actually an interesting question for me, because what I remember, there is a very distinct difference. Now, obviously, a lot changes in our lives from graduation into being a high school student into a college student, out in the real world, moved out. But it was the turning point where I would play music. Like, I'm a musician. I would write songs as a kid. And even today, like, I really love some of the first songs that I ever wrote. But the difference was I was never had the self-esteem or ability to take that up on the stage and play that out loud, and do that, like we were talking about, that altruistic, I'm going to share this like most authentic truths with the whole of the world, as opposed to just hidden behind my door and at home in the comfort of things. And it does co-align with that surgery, that moment of me graduating, having that surgery. Even to the point where, it hadn't been a couple months and I'd be removed from high school and I'd run into someone that I literally just graduated with like 3 or 4 months ago, and they wouldn't recognize me.
Oh.
So,
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting transformation that I believe happened there. As far as my sensitivity with the ears, though, I don't know that really had as much to do with it, but there has always been like a sensitivity since. I am very sensitive to what I want to listen to. I like to approach everything very meditatively when I'm listening now. But that didn't happen until many years later, and that's a whole other story. But I want to ask you too, because I have that on my list. Did you always have a proclivity to listening or any sensitivity to your ears as well?
I currently have a sensitivity to my ears. I have a constant ringing in my ears. It's subtle enough that I can block it out most of the time, but if I have earplugs in, at nighttime or something, then I'm like, oh, there it is again. Or occasional, um, noises around will just be like really, they sound way stronger than they should, like a
Yeah.
refrigerator, like humming or something. Um, but I have noticed that, um, like, I'm trying to think of how to explain this. Like, there was somebody who once told me, like, when the ringing in your ear gets really strong, because occasionally there will be like where it's like really intense kind of thing for just like a few seconds. She was like, do you ever like listen like around you? I'm like, no. And then, a few minutes later, actually, she was telling me something. Um, and then I was just like, "Oh, how did you fall?" And she's like, "What?" And she's like, "How did you know?" And I was like, "You just told me." And she's like, "No, I didn't say that." And she just was like, "I said blah blah blah." And I was like, "I heard it in your voice that you had said that." And she's like, "No, I didn't say that." And so, interesting enough, I was just like, "Well, there's, you know,
Wow.
maybe things do happen for a reason." But I've only have had that kind of a couple times. Um, but yeah, so I don't think it's like a mind read or anything. I think it's just more of paying attention to the energy that's around and being able to intuitively put together what she was talking about on what had happened, basically.
Yeah. And I get that too. Sometimes I didn't really learn these lessons until I got into sales, actually. But when it came down to like the specifics types of words, like when someone would say something, I hear you, they have this like a much more ability to learn by listening. And then when they say like, there's a way that people speak, they're like, I see you, or like their modality of like acknowledging you opposite
Hmm.
them, the words in which they use like show you by just listening what in which way you should best respond to them to stay within that best learning sphere. Like teachers should know this beyond shadow of a doubt in most categories. But as far as those ears, also like any music we were talking about, like what is peaceful, right? Or is there's people that really like the scream, right? Is that just a result of somebody who just has a yearning to say something they don't want to say? Or as far as music is concerned, like what do you really view music as in its whole essence, I guess?
Um, as far as music goes, my music has completely shifted what I listen to now. Now I'm kind of more about like positive messages. I feel like are really important because what we say becomes our reality. And so if I'm singing along to a song where it's talking about depression or hating people or something, like, I'm speaking those out. And so I've really stick to like more positive, um, positive messages that are in it, as well as like, um, Celtic kind of music, just kind of, more like, I guess I would call it like more high vibrational kind of music and frequencies. There's even like a debate about, they had changed, the background of some music to from 432 to 440, and there's like a debate even on that, on, um, like what's better for you kind of a thing. But I think
Yeah,
that if there is frequency that's in the background and it's, not the best for us kind of thing, it can definitely impact us for sure.
I just bought hand drum. I'll show it to you real quick. But it is interesting when you start shopping for something like this. There's the difference of the 432 hertz to the 440 hertz. So the reason I went with 432 hertz bass, and this is a cheapo. This is just not the high, the best of the best or anything, but it was a practice thing, to see like what that really looks like and sounds like. I don't know if you can hear
it's
that.
Not picking up.
Yeah.
I could hear it, but it doesn't sound like it's supposed to, and I know it does sound like it just kind of sounds like you're smacking something.
Yeah.
Darn you.
It's okay. It's such a Zoom.
Video.
But yeah, as far as sound, like this is a tool or a instrument, known as the hand drum or hand pan. And this one's like at the keynote of E minor, I believe, or D minor. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. In fact, I think it's D minor. But yeah, within that like field, that frequency, and I believe the D alone is the sacral chakra. So it's in that creativity state. So it's been a really nice little tool for me to use. But yeah, when you look at something like this, there's a delineation and a difference between a 432 hertz tuned or a 440 hertz tune. And the only distinction why I chose this one is that the 432 is more calibrated to what a meditative tones are or a physical tones are versus the 440, which is in that like there's like the modern day what they're trying to change psychology when we're listening to music, when we're out in the field. It kind of is a separation. It may not seem like much, but as you know about those tuning forks, right? When we're in a meditative space to even just the 8 points of hertz degree, that alters the connectivity to the things that we're listening to, what we're feeling, what we're hearing. So it is quite a dramatic shift, although it may not seem like it on the surface.
Yeah, and it's just a couple numbers off and completely shifts it. What I was going to say is I actually will play frequencies from a tree a lot of times in the background of my meditations, because I tend to, when I'm doing a sound bath, I tend to do my meditation first, so that I can speak more clearly and calmly. I haven't one day I'll master being able to do a full-on meditation while playing a sound bath, but for right now, my comfort zone is to do the meditation first, which allows me to be able to really kind of tap into when people are ready to move on to the next thing. Sometimes I like to let them simmer in a certain space for a while. And so while I'm doing that meditation, the frequencies from a tree is actually from an olive tree in the Mediterranean that's like 400 years old. And yeah, they have different frequencies that they're playing throughout, and they have actually made some recordings where they've, measured what frequency that's at, and so I can go in and kind of choose which one I want to play depending on the meditation. But that's kind of nice and relaxing because it also brings in that nature aspect and bringing us back to nature and in our roots in a sense. And the really cool thing is, because I know that I've even have like combining the sounds with the skincare kind of aspect, but I ended up finding a company that does that in return, and that's the skincare that I sell, and they're the ones who get these frequencies from the olive trees, and that's actually where my skincare is made from that I use and sell as well. So I think that's really cool that not only am I like trying to figure out like how can I incorporate these two, but then I found a company that does the exact same thing, which is really amazing.
Yeah, that is quite interesting and amazing. I'm glad you found something like that. And I'd love to find out more about that on a one-on-one basis, just what hertz that's at or like where you're getting those frequencies at. But I was going to ask you too, like, was there ever a time as far as like your sound healing journey, like where you maybe doubted or had a lot more skepticism about sound healing, or a lapse, like a goalie between the moment that you entered this curiosity, this field, and whether or not it ever even had an actual effect? Opposite, like not in the same thing as the intuition that we were talking about before, but
Uh-huh.
just as on a personal basis, like where you were just like, why am I not getting a result?
No, I don't feel like I had gone through something like that other than lack of confidence
Yeah.
was my biggest thing. Um, but I don't feel like there was ever a time when I was like, this doesn't work. But I think that's because I was on a really big healing journey when I discovered it. And it was just like 4 years ago. But yeah, I think it was just me trying to build up that confidence. And it was the practice of doing it on my friends and my family members first. And then that kind of helped build up that confidence a little bit. And then, the more people that I started working on that I didn't know before, the more feedback I got from them and what they were experiencing made a huge difference. The biggest thing that I also, besides just helps me with the question it kind of thing, is actually those group sound baths because afterwards we all talk about our experiences with it. I say we all, but I don't because I'm just, I'm behind the scenes. But I will ask everybody that they can share their experience with us if they want to. Not mandatory by any means, but hearing even just from like the sound bath and the meditation, the shifts they had during that is pretty huge sometimes. And it also helps other people that are in that room that might be their first time going to a sound bath of being like, hey, I'm not crazy. I had something similar to that. And there's been people where it's been their first time and they're like, my hip was hurting. It's not anymore, just from after a sound bath.
Yeah.
So
When
it's
I
pretty incredible sometimes the stuff that people end up sharing. What were you going to say? Sorry.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say and mention on that note, like my first one was fairly recent as well, as far as the crystal bath healing. And my sister and her roommate, I went with them. So it's just an interesting thing because as much as I've been on the solfeggio train and doing sound meditations, like all of 2023, this was in I think January this year, and it's different in person when you're actually within four walls and feeling a crystal bowl bouncing off and going through everybody else's energy. That literal connection between that hertz frequency, where when they started doing those high frequencies, like I literally feel my head pulsing, and I can only imagine the sensitivity as a person who was like already doing sound meditations, someone who was already very cognitive of it, but without having any background in it, just how much that can rattle someone's cage certain times. But
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of it, is that when we get calibrated, when we get shook up, when we break away from our comfort zone, that's as a matter of definition of sound healing. I love that you said that you never were really skeptical about it, because no matter what, like by karma, by all these hermetic principles, but especially karma, it's like I always get what I deserve, and I'm always receiving what I'm capable of receiving, nothing
Yeah.
more. So I just think that that's a beautiful message, as far as like you running those things. And it's the same thing when I run meditations. It's like I'm there as a facilitator, but I really want the feedback. I want to get a sense of validation when I'm trying to not perfect, but just become a little bit better day in, day out, of like making my experience worthwhile, my effectiveness, my utility to other people. And that's why I wanted to do this interview series and invite beautiful, wonderful, spirited people like yourselves and Jenna Lee, and I've done Justin and Tara. But as the last like couple questions we're going to kind of get into here, Amber, and I know this kind of turns it up a bit, but this is a sensitive
Turn it up.
subject for me. Yeah, volume's going to go up just a little bit here. With when we're talking about sound healing, I know I brought you into this beforehand. If sound can be used for healing, do you also think that it can be used as a, quote, weapon under the pretenses of technology and all the other things? Like we've already touched on 432 to 440 hertz,
Yeah.
the disconnection. And if so, like, what does that really look like in relationship to this topic?
I definitely think that it could be used as a weapon. I feel like it's um really important with somebody who is working on you to get a good vibe from them as well, because of that aspect. That's why I also had said before of um wanting to help people and coming from a place of love is important. So if someone's having a bad day and they're trying to, like, basically what I'm trying to say is everything has a frequency. Um, so even when you're like around somebody and they're putting off some frequencies, and so that's why empaths can, determine like the energy of people around them in a sense. So yeah, basically with everything having a frequency, it can be used as a weapon for sure. Trying to think of like how much to dive into that. Um,
Yeah, it's okay.
but
I
I,
mean, I'm just kind of curious about, because like I perceive it from so many different facets. But when we're just talking about a simple thing, when where everything's online and what I'm listening to, it's like algorithms and AI and everything else. It's so easy to um, allow a potential tsunami, which would otherwise in the past just been a wave or like a brief little storm. Now, if we bring too much intention or attention, away from who we actually are harmoniously, here, this crown chakra, this sound bite of like the ether, the spaces beyond, you know, even as I was talking to myself, I did a sound recording last night, and I was talking about, where I'm at on planet Earth, and the astrologers of the modern day. What did they observe in the sky that was limited to stars and planets and different things? But now between those planets, those stars today, we have satellites and technology and this sound wave and CERN technologies and storm things in the modern day. And to what degree we know what they're being used for, I don't know that we'll ever fully know. Hopefully, we will.
yeah,
But these are the types of technology modern day, where it's like, am I fighting a losing battle under the soundscape? And as a person who's been recently going back to Bible studies and things of that nature, just out of my own curiosity, it's like certain books and certain stories of Old Testament times is literally the downfall of civilizations by the sound of instruments surrounding a city, Jericho and so on. So it's like there's so much to be said about sound and why it is so imperative and important to stay within ourselves, within like a comfortable sphere, but not so much for the sakes of comfort, because there is a point where, as a matter of fact, sound healing, we need to break out of ourselves. We need to move through these sacral and solar plexus and heart chakras in order to really fully be endowed with a blessing capable of sharing and giving it away. But
right.
nonetheless, like that's a journey through the gauntlet of what otherwise is a really loud world.
Yeah, I definitely see that as well. I'm on the same page as you.
Yeah. So I know it's hard to find the words sometimes to explain that side. I hope you don't mind me take. That's just why I even bring up that question. That's why I say like this is turning it up loud. That's why I wanted to do this interview with you specifically. I've had my own curiosity on these things, but as someone who literally works one-on-one with people and has access to tools that I want to become, on your level, to be able to use them and have them at my. But for right now, I just have a 432 hertz D minor. D minor
That's a
little.
start. I
Yeah.
started with one sound bowl to begin with, and now I have like even a second sound. set of sound bowls. So
It's a beautiful thing. And then obviously, I know I told you what my last question is, but obviously my YouTube channel this year is kind of more gearing up toward the interview thing. I want to get as many interviews in and meet more new people, and especially delving into these topics of chakra, because it's a meditative, arena for me to become creative and share that with the rest of the world. So for yourself, where or what does meditation mean to you, firstly? And then secondly, what's your most meditative space, or place of serenity that you get to experience on a regular basis, Amber?
So for me, meditation means kind of like being able to be in the present, having like a really good sense of like calm and peace. Um, and it can be something that's either more of a silence kind of a thing, or it could be even something of like getting some messages on like how to move forward kind of a thing, or just even like saying like affirmations to yourself. But to me, it's just very much of a higher vibration doing is really what being like in a meditative state kind of means to me. Um, the places where I connect to that the most, I would say, is actually nature. There's a place that's really close to me. It's only like a minute walk actually. That has there's like this really beautiful like willow tree, and there's a pond and a little man-made rock waterfall kind of a thing. And I just love to sit in the grass right there and just go into like a meditative state. That or water is a really healing place for me as well. My favorite is probably like floating um, up and then just having my eyes closed and like feeling the warmth of the sun kind of go through my eyes. Um, but also, I'm kind of a little bit of a mermaid and will spend a really long time in a bathtub sometimes if that's all I have.
Yeah.
I'm not like leaving my house or something. So it is nice to be able to access that. And I will actually charge my water ahead of time with intentions that I'm wanting. And we'll just sit there in the bathtub and just meditate in there. And it gives me a great feeling of peace. And there's just something about like the floating, it's almost like a surrender to gravity, I guess.
Nice. So yeah, I think it's really important just to have that space. It's beautiful that it's a minute away. I have a similar thing here, where there's a dog park and then a running river and the baseball field's there, but it opens up into 2 or 3 different disc golf courses. The trailhead that goes on for miles, of course, is right here, and those are all a minute walking as well. And so yeah, having that harmony, having that connection between, I think that's beautiful too. You said about like in nature, getting that hertz frequency you talked about with the olive
Yeah.
tree and things of that. But where can people find you, Amber? Where and what do you have coming up in the near future? And just any other plug that you'd like to throw in here as well.
Well, I'm in the middle of a rebrand currently, so the best way to find me right now would be my link tree, and that's Linktree Amber OToole, which is my name, so
Oh,
AMBEROTOOLE.
perfect.
That's the best place because with my rebranding, I'll be able to put all my new things in there. And then I do monthly sound baths, like group sound baths. So I do have a sign up newsletter thing on there that if you want to hear about when my events are happening, I do send out those newsletters, update people on that. To sign up for that in my link tree as well. Um, there's Being on Fire is a really big healing festival that is in September,
It's the
and
one
I will
in
be
Cedar City, right? Cedar City, Utah.
yes, Cedar City, Utah. It's like about 4 nights, really cheap for 4 nights. It's like 200-ish dollars. I forget the exact price of it.
Yep.
I will be teaching a workshop there with my friend Ian. He's kind of um, like a joyful shaman kind of
Okay.
vibe, and so he'll be doing some sacred smoke while I'm kind of doing the sound bath and teaching about the different chakras. But anybody who goes to that, I would love for you to visit my workshop. And then I have a lot of full moon things that I'm kind of involved with as well that I do a sound bath with most of the months. But sometimes we skip a month or two depending on people's schedules. But that's I feel like the best way to find out what's going on is to sign up for my newsletter. My website that I have as well will be changing, but I normally have those updated on my website as well. So Tree is for
Absolutely.
sure the best way. So I know we talked a lot about like the sound healing, but I just wanted to share really quickly the importance of like the skincare line that I use. Um, because with me being in the cosmetology field, I was on this like struggle bus for a really long time of being like, I need professional products. But then when I started getting into more like natural things, I was finding that the professional products, even though they did help, but they still had toxic ingredients in it. And then the natural stuff just didn't seem to work. And so I finally had found crystal hair care line that's professional and no toxic ingredients in it, and then also the skincare line as well. And they actually work. And most skincare has like 70% water in it, and this skips out of that, so it's highly concentrated. And the first ingredient is 70% of a olive leaf elixir made from olive trees in the Mediterranean. So super high in antioxidants, and people are receiving results in like 2 weeks. So it makes a huge difference. But I just feel like, we just need to get out because everything does have a frequency. So when we are having toxic stuff in our hair care, skincare, so many things, even in our foods, it impacts us. So I would love it if everybody switches over to beneficial things so that they can be in a higher frequency throughout their whole body. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I just want to share a little bit on that.
That's a beautiful message, and I just appreciate your time. I appreciate all that you bring to the table, your willingness to do this interview in the first place, but also just, I know we have some mutual connections, but I'm looking forward to possibly being down there at on Fire myself this September. That's a hop, skip, and a jump for me. It's probably like 3 times
Awesome.
further for you. So, what's my
It is,
excuse?
but I'll be there.
But anyhow, yeah.
Well, you're committed now. You're going.
Is that what it is? I think I still owe you like 200 something bucks. But nonetheless, all is great in the world as long as, like we say, maintain it within our affirmations, I believe, and we really, I think, dial it back on where are we giving our attention. I think that's maybe the biggest message as far as sound healing goes. And I do hope that, those that have any curiosity or interest in this interview, not just now, but going forward, can, get in contact with you and or at least at the minimum, like reach out to a sound healer that they can build an intimate relationship with too. Like someone that maybe acts as a guru or a shaman or whatever, like your friend Ian, when we have these relationships with people in our lives, that's when we actually get brought to the surface, when our creativity starts to unfold and when we start to move into the higher levels of frequency by calibration, by experience, by living, not just living in our deadness.
Yeah, just like the routine of go to work and sleep
Yeah,
and repeat.
And
You have a life to live.
anytime we break a little bit of that routine, we should expect to have a little bit of a churn up, a little bit of a flare up in our sickness and that physical well-being. But that's for the benefit of us. That's what our nervous system you were talking about. It's what we have a boundary, but within that boundary, it can grow.
Yeah.
That frequency increases as closer we get to love frequency at the center point of ourselves, as opposed to living solely at the fear level. And I don't remember where it was or who did the study, but it's like 10,000 times more powerful when we move into the love frequency, the middle ground, the middle way, as opposed to being so opinionated and on one side of the fence or the other. But
even that study with the snowflakes in the water, have you seen that one with the so this guy took jars of water basically and spoke into like one of them, like lots of love and positive things, and then lots of negative things into the other one, and froze them, and then the ice crystals in the love jar was like the love jar was
with
was
the love
like
intention.
Was very much like symmetrical, very like lovely like crystals, and then the crystal flakes, I don't know what you call those, like underneath the microscope, and look at them close.
Yeah.
And then the other one was they were like falling apart, and, like not, and so it really shows that because our bodies are made out of so much water, that what we say about ourselves, what we say about others, really creates our reality and how we feel and stuff. So
absolutely,
I just wanted to add that for people who didn't know about that.
Yeah, as Bruce Lee said,
be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. If you put it into a pot, it becomes the pot. Be water, my friend. But
be water.
We are water, no matter what. It's just how much, like by cymatics, I think is a great ending point here. Like to look into the cymatic frequencies, that relationship of shapeology within the construct. It's best and most visible when water is in a cup, surrounded by a sound frequency. Those patterns of life. There's just so much. I know we could go on for hours probably on this.
We could.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I can hear you again.
Okay, good.
I think Zoom was being like, you guys are done. Like...
It's all good. So yeah, real quick to close out, Amber, thank you so much for coming and spending so much time with me, and for the preparation work and just all that you bring to the table. I look forward to doing this again. Like we say, we can go on for hours on end to talk about sound, because it's literally the world, the field that we live in. So there's no sense in doubting the power of sound, but more correlating and aligning ourselves. That's more about what chakras are. They're not physical types of things. They're energy centers. So the better we can connect to the ideas of things, as opposed to such a three-dimensional, like we talked about really briefly, about three-dimensional to five-dimensional space, all the possibilities that open up there. I think that's the beautiful lesson. And I look forward to chatting with you again.
Okay, well, thank you so much for inviting me. I had so much fun with you. You have a great day.
Thank you all for watching. You have a great rest of your day. Bye.